I want to take you on just a little bit of the discovery that you can get on Family History, Family Search. And so let me share my screen just for a minute. And okay, is it showing the Family Search?
Yes.
Okay. So as one of the campaign discoveries for this month, it will take you on a discovery of your ancestors, of your female ancestors. And I got caught in a rabbit hole last Sunday in doing this discovery because I won't take the time, but so it's celebrate the women in your family tree. And I wanted to include my mother, who is deceased. That's what it says, if she's deceased. So what I did is I just took time with each individual. And then I went to My Heritage and I animated all these ancestors. And can I tell you, I had some emotional moments. So this is my grandma, and she was my absolute favorite. We spent the whole summer in Hawaii. I wanted to go to BYU Hawaii for the summer, and I asked her if she wanted to go with me, and she said yes. So I was in the same apartment with my grandma for 3 months. It was heaven. It was so, she was the most popular lady on campus. But anyway, to take the time to discover, to see their timelines, and to just learn about them. And again, so I went to each of these individuals and learned about them and read a story about them if it was there. And I just had the most wonderful experience. So I am going to take you just for a minute because it is so cool. So I told Pam I'd only take a minute.
Oh, you're fine.
So what you do is you go to My Heritage and you go to Family Tree and you animate a photo. And so I'll upload a photo, and let me see, like I said, I did a whole bunch. Should have had this ready. Oh, there it is. So this is my grandma that I love, that I haven't seen. We even went on missions at the same time. And I sent this to my cousins, and it's anyway, I haven't
That
seen
is
her,
just amazing.
isn't it?
That's so cool.
And she did smile like that. Anyway, it's just, so I went through each of those pictures and found, you have to find one that works, because sometimes if they're tilted a different way or they're, it doesn't work. But with this one, it happened to work. But anyway, I just encourage you for this history, Women's History Month, to take the time and to learn about those that you wonder, why am I like who I am, and what do I look like, and why do I have these tendencies or whatever. This is the time to find out. Take the time. And anyway, are there any questions on how to get there, or any questions?
So I just wanted to make sure. So you took the picture from Family Search, put it on My Heritage, and now that animation is on My Heritage. It does not go back to Family Search.
No. Okay, so in fact, thank you for saying that. So I'll go to my grandma. This is my other grandma. And so I went to Memories. And again, you really got to look through and find a photo. I don't think this one worked very well, but then so I find a photo, and then on the actions, I download it. Okay, Then I go to my heritage, click on the family tree and to animate photos. I'll upload that. And here's that image. And I'll open it and I'll upload it. And then it will take this time. From what I recall, this one, it was too big or something. I can't remember. Oh, and I could have colorized it first, which I think is pretty fun too, is to colorize it and then do it. Yeah, see, for some reason that
That
one
pretty
doesn't-
good.
it's still
Yeah.
pretty.
So Tammy, I'm a little behind the ball here. Is My Heritage, is that part of Family Search? Is that what I'm seeing? So
No, it's another partner that we have that is available for free for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And if you aren't a partner to it, then when we meet tomorrow night, I'll get you partnered. I'll
Okay.
partner you up.
Well, so I was just Googling it and it says start your 14-day free trial. I don't need to do that then.
No,
And it is available at the center.
Okay.
all right, Pam, I will stop sharing and turn the time. But anyway, so cool. But just beware, 3 or 4 hours later if you do this. But it's really cool.
That's awesome. I really like that campaign. I did notice as they showed each individual, they showed a button to see their timeline. I think when you're searching for women, the timeline is even more important. I mean, it's one of the main tools that we use when we research, but I think for women, it really comes into play. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome.
No,
No?
Oh,
No, not me. I must need to do something.
Yeah, because it's up.
Are you seeing the women in our trees?
yes.
Okay,
That, yeah. Is that your screen?
that's my screen.
Oh, okay. I was looking for something that, you know,
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so this is the first time I'm doing this presentation, so it's always a little rough the first time, and but I'm pretty excited to do it because looking for the women in our trees, sometimes they get a little lost. And so it's really important that we are able to find them. My mom used to say, you come from a long line of stubborn women, and it can be a good thing as long as you're stubborn for the right reasons. Two of the challenges that we face when we're researching women are naming practices and governmental rights. So as far as names, a lot of times women will have nicknames, and they can vary quite a bit. It's important to consider all kinds of nicknames that your ancestors might have. For instance, if their name is Elizabeth, they could go by Betty, Beth, Lizzie, Eliza. Margaret could be Peggy or Daisy because Marguerite is French for Daisy. Mary could be Polly. In the handout, which I'll attach at the end, sorry, I should have attached it at the beginning. There's a link to traditional nicknames in old documents. It's a Family Search wiki page. To search that list, all you have to do is use Control F or Command F, like we've done on numerous occasions. And then you can just type in your ancestor's name. For instance, when doing that for Margaret, there were 19 possible nicknames for her. Where we live, a majority of the women take the surname of their spouses upon marriage. In some countries, such as Sweden, historically women have the same name their entire life. I recently connected with a Swedish relative, and she was one of the first in her family to take her husband's name. So that's how long that process has kind of gone on. In Spanish-speaking countries, both surnames are passed to the next generation, the husband and the spouse. However, when they immigrate to the US, and that's where we will keep most of our research discussion, they would take on their husband's surname. So my ancestor, Katarina Steffensdotter, when she came to the US, was Katarina Nyberg. When researching a female who marries, you want to be sure to run the research queries for each of the surnames she used throughout her life. So that would be your maiden name and any married name she had after that. If your person marries a second time, her surname from the first marriage may have been used on the record for the second marriage. And that's why it's important to run the query using the different surnames. So you run it the first time, and then you change the last name, run it again. Indexing often doesn't require titles to be indexed. So on a marriage record, it might say Miss Mary Jones, or it might say Mrs. Mary Jones. And with that title not being indexed, it's really important to look at the original record if you can. Women were hardly ever alone. Often in our research, we look for the maiden name of an ancestor. We know the birth name, and we're trying to find what happened to them. One of the best ways to do that is to research the people they're connected with. And males have kind of an advantage in this is because they, most of the times, were on the governmental records. Not always were the women there. So I would first start with, if I knew the father, I would start with the father. If I knew the siblings, I'd start with the siblings. Same with searching for the known mothers and sisters too. By searching for the people around them, sometimes we find, for instance, if we're looking for a maiden name and we're searching the person's siblings, sometimes the mom's maiden name pops up on the sibling record. We'll go through a few more of those in just a second. One of the first places I look for maiden names or connections is in newspapers, because obituaries are wonderful for this. So married women are recorded with their current married name or as Mrs. and then their husband's name. So if we know the married name, she may appear in her parents' obituary or siblings' obituary, which would then give us her maiden name. If we know the maiden name, we most likely will know the parent or a sibling's name. And if we can find their obituaries, that would lead us to what her married name is. So now that also helps us narrow the time frame of the marriage or indicate that there might be an additional marriage. So does that make sense to everyone? I know it can sound kind of confusing. So if they're married, and we don't know their maiden name, they might appear in their parents' obituary or a sibling's obituary with that married name. And then that would give us a clue to what their maiden name is. On the other hand, if we know the maiden name and we know a parent or a sibling, we can search for those and find their obituaries, which would give us a clue to the married name. All right. Feel free to pipe up if it gets a little confusing.
Should we be frantically taking notes, or is there a way to get a copy of this?
No, there's a handout,
Perfect.
and I will attach it after.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, so here's an example of an obituary. This is for Mrs. Pauline L. Pardee. She passed away while giving birth to her daughter, Nola Kay. It gives her former name, so we have her maiden name. It has when she was married to her husband, and then surviving are the widower and the infant daughter, her mother. So now we have her mother's name, which it looks like her mother has married again because it's Ora Smith Bedwell. So that's something that we would want to take note of. She has 3 sisters. It gives us the married names of her sisters and where they live. So knowing the time of the death, the year of the death, and the place that they live, if we were looking for one of those sisters, we could go to the census record closest to that to get more information. It also lists the names of her brothers and where they live. And again, if we needed to know more about them, we could go to there for more information. So also in newspapers, you'll find marriage records for themselves or their siblings. Keep in mind that matron of honor means that person is married and maid of honor is unmarried. This is a very short one. This is E.E. Smith, age 48 of Olstey, and Mrs. Mahaly Hensley, age 29 of Winewood, married by Justice of the Peace Moore. So this is one where her married name is what's going to come up in the search because this is a second marriage for her.
Oh.
Public notices for marriage licenses, divorce, land transfers, probate court, those are all things that show up in the newspaper. This is a public notice by the, this is actually for the state. Usually it'll be by county. So this lists the marriage of J.M. Wehunt and Mrs. Emma Robbins at Black Springs. You'll also see divorces listed in there, land transfer. A lot of times that's being transferred to a relative. Probate court, things had to be published in the newspaper prior to saying that if I have any debts that you are owed, you need to come collect them. Community news and travel logs. This is one of my favorites. A lot of times you'll get really good clues from this that you didn't expect. This is one visitor, Lieutenant Colonel and Mrs. Maisel Schofield will arrive Thursday to spend the holidays with Mrs. Schofield's parents, Mr. and Mrs. F.M. Duckworth. So if I didn't know Maisel Schofield's maiden name, this would be a good clue for me to be able to find it. Let's go to the next one. Sister Hermangould, the former Mary Hopton, came Saturday for a week's visit with her mother, Mrs. Anna Hauptman, and other relatives she had taught at Sunfish, Kentucky. So this is actually a relative of my brother-in-law's, and I had no idea when Mary Hopton had gone. And it turns out she had become a nun and a teacher, and she went by Sister Hermangould. I'm terrible at pronouncing things, I apologize. But having that other name, I was able to find several other newspapers about when she was teaching at different places. She, I think, became a principal at a school, and she had a lot of articles about her under that name.
So is this like Twitter or like Facebook? Twitter, letting everybody know where their location
yeah.
is.
Yes, the travel logs, the Twitter of historical times. There was one that I didn't add on here. A lady, it said, it was another Wehunt, and she was going to visit her daughter, Mrs. Joe, and I can't remember the last name, and she had a buggy accident. She fell out of her buggy. So a lot of times, you know, it'll just give you that connection. It's not something that you would be able to prove the connection in court, but it gives you that clue of, oh, I can look up Joe something or other now, look for his marriage record and see which Wee Hunt daughter he got married to. So there's also genealogical societies and local libraries. A lot of times they're going to have histories for the area or family histories that you can look into, see if you can find some clues there. And again, search for the various names of the woman you're looking for, but also search for the known family members. Birth, marriage, and death records. Birth, marriage, and death records sometimes list the maiden name of the mother. So even if a woman was born before they started keeping birth records, if one of her children was born when they were keeping birth records, she might be on there with her maiden name. Same for marriage and death records. And so you want to look at, if you don't know the woman's maiden name, you want to look at all of the children's birth, marriage, and death records to see if that maiden name is on there. And these records started at different times in different states. So that's kind of why you want to have that timeline of when and where. So if this person was born in Kentucky, I could go to the Family Search Wiki and look up birth records in Kentucky. And that would tell me when birth records started and where they might be located, where I can search for them. And so that will help me know if I'm going to search in that area for if those birth records are going to be available, or if I maybe need to try another avenue. So you really want to learn about the area and time frame when you're doing research. Keep in mind there's church and civil records. Lutheran Church has really good records. A lot of them are available on Ancestry. Even here in the United States, Lutheran records in Sweden were the records. And as people came over from Sweden, the Lutheran Church kept the same kind of records here. So you want to check and see what civil records are available, and if there are church records available for that area and time. When you're looking at these records, when you're looking at a baptism, look at who the godparents and the witnesses are. Most likely they're relatives. Look at the witnesses of the marriage. A lot of times those also will be relatives. So you'll want to search out their names, you know, just do a little quick search to see if that might be a sister of the groom. The informant on the death certificate is important to look for, not only because it could be a relative, but if it's not a relative, that kind of puts into question some of the information on the death certificate. By looking at the informant, we can kind of decide the validity of the birth date on the death record versus a record of the birth date somewhere else. A lot of times someone might have spent a lot of time in a home or a hospital before they passed away, and it's someone from that institution that's the informant. So Ancestry has this one collection that I really love, and it's called Social Security Application Collection. I can't remember if that's the exact title, but it's close. You'd be able to find it if you go to the catalog. And the reason I like it is for more recent people, when you find them in the Social Security Application Collection, it will list all of the times their names changed. So if a woman married 4 times, every time her name changes, it will list the last name and the date that it changed. So that is going to help you find marriage records for that set of marriages. And it also might help you find her in newspapers by searching under those different last names. Search siblings, birth, marriage, and death records. I had a hard time finding a maiden name for a Mary Jones, who was born in 1809. And I searched, I think she had, I want to say 7 or 8 kids. I was searching through all the kids that I could find, marriage, birth, death. I was not finding a maiden name for her. And it wasn't until one of her children moved to the state of Washington and died, where they record the maiden name at that time, and it listed the maiden name for Mary Jones. So be sure and check all of the children of the woman that you're looking for a maiden name. If you know her maiden, yeah. So be sure and check all the records of the people around them. Okay, census records. So census records from 1790 to 1840 only listed the head of household. And a lot of times we think, well, that rules out any women in my family, but not all heads of households are males. This is from 1790, and this is in New York, I want to say, Schuylkill. It's either New York or Massachusetts, sorry. It lists Benjamin Van Lees, Adam Meyer, Frederick Scherner, Jeremiah Wadley, and Mary Hillgrove. And she is listed as a widow. Believe it or not, this loop right here, and then you can't quite see the connection to the rest of the W, is widow. So she's, even though it's 1870, she's listed on that census. And what I did to find an example for tonight is I went to Ancestry and I narrowed it down in the catalog to the 1790 census. And I typed in the name Mary and did a search. And there were several Marys that came up on the 1790 census. So I wouldn't rule those censuses out that we traditionally think are only the male head of household. From 1850 to 1870, everyone in the household is listed, but the relationship isn't given. So if you see an older woman listed after the children, they're possibly the mother or mother-in-law, and you should research them out. 1850 to 1860 asks if you were married within the year. So a lot of times that will help us find that marriage record. 1880 and after lists relationship as it pertains to head of household. So if the husband's mother is living with them, she will be listed as mother. If the spouse's mother is living with them, she will be listed as mother-in-law. And you'll want to verify all of these things. I have one family on my husband's side who had 2 mother-in-laws living with him because his first wife had passed away, and her mom, his first mother-in-law, stayed with them even after he remarried. And so it was a little confusing at first. So you want to make sure that you're researching those out and getting other records to help establish those relationships. So in 1900, it lists the number of years in the current marriage. And again, that will help you narrow down the marriage record that you might be looking for. For instance, if you know their married name, that can help you narrow that down. And it's important that that's there in 1900 because we have that gap between 1880 and 1900, that 20-year gap where we don't have the 1890 census because of the fire. 1910 lists the number of years in the current marriage, and it also indicates if this is a first marriage or a multiple marriage. If it says M1, it's the first marriage, and then M2 could indicate any marriage after the first, according to the instructions in the census. But I have seen on census records where it will say M3 when it's the third marriage. So just so that you're aware of that. And then in 1930 through 1940, it lists the age at the time of their first marriage. So again, you need to know that in case they are on their second marriage. That would be a little confusing if you're trying to look for the date of the first marriage or the second marriage from when the age when they were first married. And then 1900 through 1940 indicates citizenship, which brings us to our next set of records, and those are naturalization records. So a single or widowed woman often didn't file for naturalization because in the early part of the country, because there were a few liberties of citizenship that were available to them, such as voting. So even if they applied for citizenship, they couldn't vote. In 1790 through 1922, citizenship of wives was granted via the husband's citizenship. This was the same for minor children also. They gained their citizenship through their father. So their proof of naturalization was their marriage record and their husband's naturalization papers. Same for the children. I did see on a census recently where he was an adult male married with children of his own, but his citizenship had the indication FA, meaning he got his citizenship from his father. In 1906, the Bureau of Immigration and Naturalization is created, and paperwork is standardized. And on this, it includes information for wives and children listed on the petition or the second papers. So my grandfather, he came in 1912. When you look at his petition, it lists his information, it lists my grandma's information, including maiden name, where they were married, where she was born, where they're living now. It lists all of their children, their ages, and where they are living at the time he applies for citizenship. Oh, and yeah, where they're born. So 1907, we have what's called the Expatriation Act. And it declares that female US citizens who marry foreign-born men lose their citizenship and assume their husbands. This is from a census from 1920. And when we look at it, we can say, see Gust F. Breaker, he's the head of household. He came to America in 1872, and the AL means he's alien. He has not applied, he has not put in any papers for citizenship. He was born in Germany. His wife is Alvina L., and she was born in Wisconsin, but she too is considered an alien because she married someone foreign born. So she lost her citizenship. This too is from the 1920 census. This is a little harder to read. This is Thomas Campbell, head of household. He came in 1886. PA is papers, meaning he has applied his papers. He's from Scotland. We see his wife, Minnie, below. She was born in Minnesota, but she's considered an alien by marriage, is what they have written in there. Meaning when she married him, she lost her citizenship. In 1922, so just after that census, Congress passed the Married Women's Act, or Cable Act, and it repealed part of the Expatriation Act that required women to adopt the citizenship of their husbands, with the exception of those husbands who are of Asian descent. In 1936, women who had lost their citizenship prior to 1922 can regain it via oath of allegiance only if the marriage was terminated by death or divorce. It wasn't until 1940 that all women who had lost their citizenship between 1907 and 1922 because of marriage could regain their citizenship regardless of marriage status. And also, when you're considering using the naturalization records, consider the nationality of your female ancestor, because over time, immigration laws have been exclusive to certain nationalities. For example, from 1882 until 1943, Chinese could not apply for citizenship. In 1943, Chinese workers could apply for citizenship. They capped it at 105 people. It wasn't until 1946 that they opened it more. So as you find out details about your ancestors, it's going to help you decide where you're going to want to look. And don't be afraid to Google your questions. For instance, you can Google timeline of Chinese naturalization in the United States. And there's a timeline out there that can help you understand what records might be available for your ancestors. So then we're going to talk about land records. So early rules of land ownership, again, widely depend upon the location and time. Back in the early America, unmarried women, including widows, were allowed to buy and sell real estate. It was called personalty, which seems like such an odd word. However, a married woman could not own land. She had what were called dower rights, which is different than a dowry. A dowry, you think of Old England, the man writes up his plan for the wife and presents it to the dad. That's a little different. This is dower rights, or widow's third. So a widow could not inherit her husband's land unless he specified it in the will. Instead, ownership will go to the husband's heir, and she will get a third of its use or profits for the remainder of her widowhood. So unless the husband wills the property to her, she just gets use of it, and then it passes on to the heir once she dies. And that kind of dwindled over time. This was very popular kind of pre-Revolutionary War, but in some states have done away with it. Ohio, however, has been debating it for the last 2 years, whether or not they're going to get rid of the dower rights for the state of Ohio. So again, it depends on location. If a husband or husband's heir, if he passes away, wanted to sell the land, the wife or the widow would need to relinquish her right. So a lot of times this is where we can find the wife's name in those early records. This record happens to be from 1799. And I only have a portion of it up here, but it's Benjamin Hathaway is who they're selling the land to. So Stephen West is the heir, and he wants to sell this land to Benjamin Hathaway. So he needs his mother to give up her dower rights. So it says Benjamin Hathaway to hold us forward that I will warrant and defend the same to him, the said Benjamin Hathaway, and his heirs and assignees forever against the lawful claims and demands of all persons whatsoever. And I, Abigail, the wife of Peg Leg West, love that name, of said Barnstable, that's where they live, in consideration of the above mentioned sum, will and truly pay to my son Stephen Wright, do hereby resign, make over, and forever quit claim to all my right of dower and power of thirds that I have or may have to the above described premises to him, the said Benjamin Hathaway, and his heirs and assignees forever. In witness thereof, we have hereunto let my hand and seals this the 19th day of February, Anno Domino. And I'm pretty sure it's 1799 or 1788, sorry. And then it has her mark and where their seals would be, because this is a copy. So again, there we find a connection between Stephen West and Abigail West and Peg Leg West. So we're making that family connection through this deed or this forfeiture of dower rights. So if the husband's heir was married and wanted to sell the land, he would need permission of not only the widow, but also of his wife. And this was done so that after the sale, the widow or wife couldn't come back and say, wait, that's mine. You can't have that. And that person would possibly lose part of their land. So William Dollarhide has a blog post that I've included in the handout, and he shares the example of Martha Dandridge Curtis Washington. She was the wife of President George Washington, and that was her second marriage. Her first husband had passed away. And so it talks about her dower and how that worked out with who inherited and when they were allowed to inherit because of how long she lived and how long, I think it was to a grandchild by the time the inheritance was able to pass down from her first husband. Okay. So before 1844, married women were allowed to own and manage property in their own name if their spouse was incapacitated. So I don't know if maybe at some point some woman said, I really want to control my own property. But anyway, probably not. But I did think that when I first read that, I thought, okay, married women could own but not control property in their own name. So they could own it, they just couldn't do anything about it because their husband had all those rights. So
I'm really glad that that rule was changed so that I wouldn't be made incapacitated.
Yeah, you sleep with one eye open, honey. I know how much you're worth. All right, starting in 1844 in Maine and Massachusetts, married women were granted separate economy, meaning they were able to own their own property and manage their own property and have their own money. And again, this was just Maine and Massachusetts. You need to know where your ancestors lived so that you can look at the records for that time. Because for Idaho and Washington, it wasn't until 1887 and 1899, respectively, that women were granted separate economy. And so up until that time, you really want to search out the men's names also, because they're the ones that are going to be on the record, but the women might show up because the men needed their permission sometimes, depending on the circumstances, in order to do stuff with the property. So pension records. Did you know that Anna Marie Lane received a pension in 1808 for serving in the Revolutionary War? A lot of wartime female service was nurses. Anna Marie Lane actually dressed as a man and went and fought alongside of her husband. Her pension was granted in the state of Virginia, and it was awarded by the state of Virginia. And in the handout, I include the link to the petition to the governing body in order to give her the pension. But over time, you have some women who served in the military that received pensions, but also wives of military veterans who were filing for after their husbands had passed. Now, when a veteran filed for his pension too, if the veteran's still living, sorry, I got ahead of myself and killed off the man too soon. A veteran who is living could file for his own pension, but he needed to show need, and a lot of times that would include a list of dependents. So this is from 1820, and this is for Joseph Whitmore, and it talks about his service and so forth, but we're going to concentrate on this, which is a list of his dependents. It says he's a farmer and his debility subject to cramps and rheumatism. But then it lists Abigail Whitmore, 64, who we can fairly positively assume is his wife, is very weakly and infirmed. There's a Seth Whitmore, probably a child. Common ability, Abigail, 17. And I'm not sure what, hers is ditto. So she has common ability too. And then this could be Luke. I'd have to look at that name a little closer and look at the document. They're 13, they're weakly and sickly. And then a Peter Abbott, who's not a Whitmore, age 5, living with them. And he's fine. And then it has Joseph's signature. So this is 1820. And in 1820, census records were only listing head of household. And this right here kind of gives us a little bit more information of how this family was made up. And so that's clues to where to look for more information. Let's see. So eventually survivors could file for pensions, but they would need to provide proof in detail of service and relationship, and including witness statements saying, I knew this person, I know they got married at this time, I know they lived across the street from me for 20 years. So there's a lot of information that you can find in those pensions. And when we did the scavenger hunt before the conference this year, one of them was on the 1812 pensions. And that collection is free at Fold 3. So Fold 3 is a fee-based website, but it does have a few collections that are free, and those 1812 pensions are one of the free collections. And I can't remember how many pages of information were in that file for that pension, but it was amazing the amount of detail, including where they worked and when they were married. There was just a lot there to add to the family tree. Okay, so probate courts, specifically wills and guardianship. I love wills. I love wills. These records extend back to pre-Revolutionary War times and can often prove or disprove relationships. They can give clues to the women that we are searching for. So female heirs are often listed with married names and sometimes their husband's full name. A female heir, female heirs who are deceased but have left children are often included in their parents' will. Guardianship of a minor child is often listed in the probate records also. So on my sister's husband's side, there was I just lost her first name. A woman who moved to Wisconsin. In their 50th anniversary article in the newspaper, it said she had been orphaned. She'd been born somewhere close to Albany, New York. and that she had moved to Wisconsin with the Robert Young family and lived with them until she married. So I was able to, and her last name was Harris. She knew that. And I was able to go to that area of New York and look up her name, which for the life of me, we're going to call her Sarah, because I can't remember her first name right now, and I'm usually pretty good about that. I looked up Sarah Harris, and I found her guardianship records, and her guardianship actually changed hands several times. And in one of the last ones, it gave a list of her relatives. It didn't say how they were related. It just said that these are close relatives. So in going through those close relatives and looking up their information, I found one that married a Robert Young, who then I was able to follow to Wisconsin. And so we were able to make the connection to the Robert Young family that she stayed with. We're going to go over a will real quick. Let me share my other screen. So this is a will from Massachusetts. This is the will of Simon Stoddard. He's in Suffolk County. Let's see, this is the 13th of May, 1757. And the first part he talks, and this is normal in a will, for the first part, they'll talk about how they want to be buried. They want their soul to go to God. They want to be buried in a Christian manner. They want their debts to be taken care of. And then they get into listing for their families. So in this one, and a lot of the early Massachusetts ones, he'll talk about what land he's giving, but he'll also name the people that he got it from. So he's talking about some land, and then he says an item is what they say to start a new section of the will. It says, I give and bequeath to my daughter, Bethia Stoddard, and her heirs and assignees forever. So that's any children that she has. And he talks about what he's giving her, and that he got the land from widow Mary Joy. Let's see, and then he gets to his next daughter. Here's the word item. I give and bequeath to my daughter, Rachel Lincoln, and her heirs and assignees. So he's listing his daughter with her married name. And he talks about what land is going to her. And then he says item again. So that means something new. I give and bequeath unto the heirs of my daughter, Leah Sprague, deceased. So now we know he has a daughter who's married someone with a last name who is deceased by this date. Their heirs and assignees forever, and he talks about what land he's giving her. And then we have the next daughter, Lydia Lewis, and her heirs and assignees forever, and what land she is going to receive. Here's another daughter. This is the Bethia, Rachel, and Lydia, and the heirs of Leah. So he's listing all of these daughters here, and what other stuff they are being given. And then when we go over here to the next part, he talks about his daughter Leah, who's deceased. And now the male heirs of his son Simon. So now we have a male child to their assignees. Let's see, real estate. So he's still talking about the stuff he's giving Simon, including all his clothes. And what happens to Simon's widow if Simon dies before he does. And then here he nominates his executors. So his son, Simon Stoddard, my son-in-law, Isaac Sprague, and Jonathan Lewis. So now we have the husbands for the daughters that were listed before. So again, this is back before census records were keeping a list of everyone in the household, and we're able to piece together a family connection between all of these people by going through this will. So they can be an invaluable source of information. Okay. So some of our research strategies for searching for women is we need to gather the known details for the ancestor that we're searching for, their siblings, parents, children. If they have histories written about them, read the history, see what names pop up in those. Create a timeline using locations, because again, the records that are available are different for each state. When you find a time period in a location that you can place your ancestor in, go to the Family Search Wiki and see what records are available for that place and time, or events that might have happened during that time, such as the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, things that they could been involved in. Let's see. Research what records are available, decide what records you want to look for. So make a list of what's missing from your timeline that should be there, or something that you think you might be able to find that information in, and write that down and do them one at a time. Don't get overwhelmed, but just answer your questions one at a time. And don't forget to research other family members, because they are often the key to a brick wall that's been staying there for a long time, because everyone's trying to go down that direct line rather than branching out to the siblings and where some of that other information might have been. A lot of times people didn't marry, or they died before they were married. And those records of those people might be able to find those direct line ancestors. If everyone only did their direct line, so many people would be missed and so much information would be missed. So are there any questions?
Oh, so many.
Oh, so many. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, none that I can ask you right this minute, but I know there'll be lots of them. Thanks, Pam, you did great.
Oh,
Hey,
thank you.
Pam,
Yes.
where do you like, or where do you find the most newspapers?
Well, again, that kind of depends on the location. There's some states that have their own historical newspaper collection. For instance, Wisconsin has theirs, but you have to be a citizen of the state of Wisconsin to research it online. So some of their newspapers are on newspapers.com. All of the different newspaper sites will tell you what newspapers they cover without you needing to buy a subscription.
Okay.
I actually have, newspapers are my downfall. I have a subscription to Ancestry.com, Genealogy Bank, News Library, which covers recent newspapers. But there are also free ones like EllaFind and the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
And there is a website called the Ancestor Hunt. And he has links to, I know it's over 17,000 different newspapers, historical newspapers. But like states like Utah has their own website for digital newspapers that's free and searchable. So
you just kind of have to do it from state.
yeah, and often because again, it's like the collections that you have on Family Search, they have to make contracts with each of those newspapers.
Yeah.
So some websites will have access to a certain newspaper where others won't. Library of Congress has in the Chronicling America, you can go to, let me bring it up. You can go and it will tell you what newspapers are available for that time frame. So let me go to this one. And I'm gonna share.
And
my
while
screen.
Pam's looking, next week, we are going to be talking about,
Yeah,
we have somebody, his name is Patrick Cabbage from Spokane, who's going to be talking about newspapers.
Oh, okay.
So we invite all of you to watch, come and watch.
so on Chronicling America, I'm gonna enlarge it a little. Right here, it says US Newspaper Directory.
Uh-huh.
That, when you go to it, you can search by location and time period, and it will tell you what newspapers were being published in that area at that time. And so even if they're not available online, you can see which newspapers are available. And they include newspapers in German and Swedish. I know I found one person's obituary in a German newspaper. I couldn't find it in any English newspapers, but I was able to find it in a German newspaper. So I'm going to copy this link real quick. And I will put that in the chat box.
Okay.
What
And
if you're looking for a divorce in the last several years?
A divorce in the last several years should be in, the county usually puts that in the newspaper on a weekly basis. Some places that so one of the websites that I've joined is News Library, and they do, it's pretty much for everything since newspapers started being digitized, so about 1990 on. Another place that you can look for divorce records is each state usually has a way to search court records. So for state of Idaho, it's iCourt. And you can go to that and put in the person's name, and divorce cases will be listed in that.
Okay, so it's a matter of just finding the one for the right state.
Yeah, and you know, there are several divorce indexes. Ancestry has some. I know they have California. Washington, you can look up divorces in Washington on Digital Archive. .wa.org. I don't know how recent they are, but I know that you can look those up.
Okay, that gives me a place to start.
Cool.
Thank you.
And also just real quick on Family Search Wiki, if there's a specific state in the United States that you want to do research on, go to Family Search Wiki and put in like Ohio. And then on the right-hand side, it will show you, you click on newspapers. Then when you click on newspapers, I'll just real quick. Oh, yeah, Pam's not. So I went to just Family Search, went to Family Search Wiki. And let's just say Ohio, oops. And if you're looking for a specific, newspapers, you click on newspapers, it will tell you what online newspapers that are available, digital issues online, local, websites. So anyway, that can give you a good start.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, and also for divorce records, you go to court records and then it will tell you.
Oh, there was divorce down there.
Was there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right there. So anyway, the Family Search Wiki is awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. We so appreciate you being on here. And again, just to let you know, you are now on the list for at the end of April to qualify for a DNA kit. So again, thank you, Pam. That was really awesome. And again, the handout is on the chat, and also will you be putting the handout on Facebook also and Instagram? We'd love for you
I
to
think
follow
what
us.
I'll do, sorry,
Okay.
I think what I'll do is put it on the website and just link back
that's
to the
true.
website. Because we do have some of our classes that we've done in the past that have been recorded that you can get to through the website also.
Okay. All right. Yes, if I can make the recording work. Okay. Thank you, everybody.